Businessman asked son to choose a mother among models, and he picked the cook. Richard Thomas Parker took a deep breath as he observed the four perfectly groomed women in the main hall of his Beverly Hills mansion. A widower for 2 years, the 43-year-old businessman had made what he considered a practical decision to solve what he saw as the biggest problem in his life. Kneeling before Ethan, his 7-year-old son, he spoke the words that would change everything forever. "Son, you can choose which of these ladies will be your new mommy." The four models flashed rehearsed smiles. Ashley adjusted her blonde hair, Samantha crossed her legs elegantly, Brittany tilted her head to the side, and Megan batted her eyes seductively. All wore expensive dresses and flawless makeup, as if on a runway. Ethan looked at them with curious brown eyes but said nothing. He slowly walked past the four, who bent down to his level, offering forced smiles. "So, my prince, who am I?" Ashley asked in a sugary voice. "Which of us do you pick?" The boy kept walking, passing them all, and headed toward the kitchen door. There stood Mary Louise, the 52-year-old cook, her curly hair tied in a simple bun, her apron dusted with flour. She watched the scene with visible discomfort, clearly embarrassed to witness it. Ethan stopped in front of her and pointed. "I choose Aunt Mary." The silence that followed was deafening. Richard felt blood rush to his face. The four models exchanged indignant glances, and Mary Louise widened her eyes, pressing a hand to her chest. "Ethan, don't be ridiculous," Richard said, struggling to keep his composure. "Pick one of the pretty ladies." "But I already chose, Dad. I want Aunt Mary as my new mommy." Ashley was the first to react, standing abruptly. "This is absurd. Richard, you promised me this was just a formality. You said you'd already decided on me." "Ashley, please." Richard tried to defuse the situation. "No. You guaranteed that in exchange for my influence in New York social circles, I'd be the one. Now I'm being humiliated over a maid." Mary Louise took a step back, clearly wanting to leave. "I'm sorry, Mr. Parker. I had no idea. I'll go back to the kitchen." "No, Aunt Mary." Ethan ran and grabbed the woman's hand. "You smell like the cinnamon cookies Mommy used to make, and you always tell nice stories when you make my snacks." Richard watched, torn between anger and embarrassment. How had his son chosen the one person who didn't fit his plans? "Mary Louise, you're dismissed for today," he said, in a tone that left no room for argument. "But Dad," Ethan began to cry. "Enough, Ethan. Go to your room now." The cook gently released the boy's hand and whispered, "It's okay, Ethan. Your dad knows what's best for you." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now back to the story. After Mary Louise left and Ethan was taken to his room by the housekeeper, Mrs. Wilson, Richard tried to calm the visibly furious models. "Ladies, I apologize for the awkwardness. Clearly, a 7-year-old isn't mature enough for this kind of decision. Let's reschedule for—" "Richard," interrupted Samantha, the second model, a brunette with green eyes who worked for the country's top agencies. "You need to understand our presence here today was already a favor. None of us need this kind of situation." "I agree," said Brittany, smoothing her gold dress. "I have a photo shoot early tomorrow. I can't waste time with childish games." Megan, the fourth model, a redhead with blue eyes, was more direct. "Richard, either you fix this situation quickly or we're leaving. We have other opportunities. Please just give me a few more days. I'll talk to Ethan and explain that." "No," Ashley stomped her foot. "You promised me this was just a formality. You said the decision was already made. Now I find out it was all a lie." Richard let out a deep sigh. Over the past 2 years, since losing his wife Catherine in a car accident, he had thrown himself entirely into work, leaving Ethan in the care of Mrs. Wilson and Mary Louise. His import business had grown exponentially, but he felt something was missing in their lives. The idea of remarrying didn't come from his heart, but from his head. Ethan needed a mother figure. He needed a companion for social events, and a strategic marriage could open important doors in business. "I'll fix this," he finally said. "Ashley, you're right. Our conversation was clear, and I'll honor our agreement." The other 3 models exchanged glances. No one had mentioned that Ashley already had an advantage in the selection. "Wait a minute," Samantha said. What conversation was this? I thought we all had the same chance. Me too, Brittany agreed. Richard, what's going on here? The tension in the air was palpable. Richard realized he had made a strategic mistake by making different promises to each of the women. Ladies, let's talk calmly. I arranged this meeting because I truly intend to choose one of you to be my wife. Ethan's choice was just unexpected. Unexpected? Megan laughed bitterly. Your son picked a 50-year-old maid over 4 professional models. That's not unexpected, it's humiliating. At that moment, Mrs. Wilson came down the stairs and approached Richard with a worried expression. Mr. Parker, may I speak with you privately? Not now, Mrs. Wilson, I'm busy. It's about Ethan, sir. He's upstairs crying and says he won't eat anything unless Mary Louise is here. Richard closed his eyes for a moment. Ethan had always been an easy child, obedient and affectionate. Since Catherine passed, the boy had grown even more attached to those who cared for him, especially Mary Louise. He'll get over it, Richard said. It's just a tantrum. With all due respect, sir, Mrs. Wilson lowered her voice. It doesn't seem like a tantrum. The boy has grown very attached to Mary Louise these past few months. She's the only one who can get him to eat when he's sad, and she always tells him the same stories Mrs. Catherine used to. Ashley sighed impatiently. Richard, I'll be clear. Either you fix this now, or I'm leaving for good. I have a career to focus on, and I can't waste time on family drama. Just give me tonight, Richard pleaded. Tomorrow everything will be settled. The 4 models agreed to leave, but made it clear they expected a quick resolution. After they left, Richard went up to Ethan's room. The boy was lying in bed, clutching a stuffed bear Catherine had given him for his last birthday. Ethan, we need to talk. I don't want to talk, Daddy. I want Aunt Louise. Son, Mary Louise is our employee. She can't be your new mommy. Why not? Ethan's simple question caught Richard off guard. How do you explain social class, marital convenience, and society's expectations to a 7-year-old? Because people will talk. And Mary Louise doesn't have the education to be a businessman's wife, but she makes the snack Mommy used to make, and she always hugs me when I'm sad. And he tells beautiful stories. Ethan, a wife needs to be more than that. She needs to know how to behave at parties, meet important people, help Daddy with the business. Mum didn't do that. Richard stopped. Ethan was right. Catherine had been an elementary school teacher, a simple and sweet woman who never cared for the social circles of New York's elite. She preferred staying home, taking care of the family, and living a quiet life. Mom was different, son. Aunt Mary Louise is different too. She's as good as Mom was. Richard left the room without knowing how to respond. He found Mrs. Wilson in the living room organizing some things. Mrs. Wilson, can I ask you something? Of course, Mr. Parker. What do you think of Mary Louise? The housekeeper, a 65-year-old woman who had worked for the family for over a decade, stopped what she was doing and looked at Richard with her experienced eyes. Mary Louise is one of the most upright people I've ever known, Mr. Parker. She's worked here for 5 years, never missed a day, never given anyone reason to complain. And more importantly, she loves that boy as if he were her own. But she's just an employee, Mrs. Wilson. With all due respect, Mr. Parker, Mrs. Catherine also came from a humble background when you married her. And it was the happiest marriage I've ever seen in this house. Richard bristled at the comparison. Catherine had a college degree. She had refined manners. Mary Louise may not have a diploma, but she has something many educated people don't, a good heart and real love for this family. Ethan needs a mother who can match our social standing. Ethan needs a mother who loves him, Mr. Parker. Those young ladies who came here today, they looked at him like he was an obstacle, not a blessing. Richard didn't like hearing that, but he knew Mrs. Wilson was right. Throughout the meeting, none of the 4 models had shown genuine interest in Ethan. They were clearly interested in the money and status the marriage would bring. The next morning, Mary Louise arrived at work as usual at 6 o'clock to prepare breakfast. Richard came down early and found her in the kitchen making pancakes, Ethan's favorite. Mary Louise, we need to talk. She turned around, looking apprehensive. If it's about yesterday, Mr. Parker, I apologize. I never meant to cause any awkwardness. It wasn't your fault. But I need you to understand something. Ethan is a child and sometimes says things without thinking. You can't take it seriously. I know that, Mr. Parker. I never thought... Good. Then it settled. Mary Louise went back to making pancakes in silence, but Richard noticed her hands trembling slightly. She was clearly shaken by the situation. Mary Louise? Yes, Mr. Parker. Why do you think Ethan chose you? She stopped what she was doing and turned to him. Her brown eyes were watery. I think he misses his mother, and maybe I do some things that remind him of her. What kind of things? Mrs. Catherine taught me some recipes before the accident. She said she wanted to make sure Ethan would always have his favorite meals, even if something happened to her. Richard felt a tightness in his chest. Catherine had always been thoughtful, always putting her family first. She also used to tell him stories every night, stories she made up herself, about a brave boy who went on adventures with his animal friends. When Ethan is sad, I tell him the same stories. How do you know those stories? Mrs. Catherine wrote them down in a notebook. She gave it to me to keep just in case. Richard hadn't known about the notebook. He felt a pang of guilt for not knowing those details about his own son's life. At that moment, Ethan came downstairs for breakfast. When he saw Mary Louise, his eyes lit up. Aunt Louise, you made pancakes? Yes, sweetheart. With lots of honey, just how you like them. Ethan sat at the table and began eating eagerly. It was the first time in days he'd shown any interest in food. Aunt Louise, are you going to stay here forever? Mary Louise glanced at Richard before answering. I'll stay as long as your daddy allows, Ethan. Daddy, can Aunt Louise stay forever? Richard felt cornered. Ethan was eating, he was happy, and Richard didn't want to ruin the moment. We'll see, son. After breakfast, Richard got a call from Ashley. Richard, I hope you've talked to your son. I'm waiting for you to finalize the details of our wedding. Ashley, I haven't completely resolved the situation yet. Richard, you promised me. I've already cancelled other plans, told all my friends I'm marrying you. Don't make a fool of me. It's not that, it's just Ethan needs to learn to obey. You're the father, he's a child. Stop giving so much power to a 7-year-old boy. The call was interrupted when Mrs. Wilson knocked on the office door. Mr. Parker, you have a visitor. Who is it? Mrs. Margaret, Mary Louise's mother. She's very upset and wants to speak with you. Richard had never met Mary Louise's mother, but knew she lived with her daughter and was a widow. Margaret was a 72-year-old woman with completely white hair and hands marked by hard work. She was visibly agitated. Mr. Parker, I came to apologize for my daughter. She told me what happened yesterday and I reminded her she shouldn't get ideas above her station. You don't need to worry, Mrs. Margaret. It was just a misunderstanding. It's just that Louise has always been too much of a dreamer. Since she was little, always thinking she could be more than our life allowed. But I taught her to know her place. Richard was intrigued. What do you mean? Louise always wanted to study, you know. When she was young, she wanted to be a teacher. But our family couldn't afford it. She had to start working early to help at home. I see. Then she married James and hoped for a better life. But he left when she was pregnant, and she lost the baby soon after. Since then, she's just worked and taken care of me. Never spoke of dreams or marriage again. Richard hadn't known Mary Louise's personal history. He began to understand why she was so dedicated to her work and why Ethan had grown so attached to her. Mrs. Margaret, your daughter is an excellent employee. Don't worry about what happened. I just want you to know Louise knows her place. She'd never take advantage of the situation. After Margaret left, Richard grew thoughtful. He was starting to realize how little he knew about the people who worked in his home, people who cared for his son every day. That afternoon, he got calls from the other 3 models, all wanting to know his final decision. Samantha was the most direct. Richard, if you choose Ashley, you should know she's only interested in your money and the social connections you can offer. How do you know that? Because she told me. Said she feels nothing for you, but the marriage would be good for her career. Richard hung up, disturbed. If Samantha was telling the truth, then Ashley was being dishonest with him. but were the others any different? At dinner, Ethan ate little and stayed quiet. Mary Louise tried to cheer him up, but the boy was clearly troubled. "Aunt Louise, my daddy said you can't be my new mommy." "Ethan," Richard tried to intervene. "But why not? You're kind, make delicious food, tell beautiful stories." Mary Louise knelt beside Ethan's chair. "My angel, your daddy is right. I'm just the cook. Your daddy needs a wife who's like him, who knows how to talk to important people and went to good schools. But I don't want a wife for my daddy. I want a new mommy for me." Ethan's words left everyone speechless. Richard realized he'd only thought about marriage from an adult perspective, without truly considering what his son needed. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. That night, Richard couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Ethan's words, Mary Louise's story, and the model's behavior. He began questioning whether he was making the right decisions. At 2 in the morning, he heard footsteps in the hallway. He got up quietly and saw Ethan going downstairs. He followed his son discreetly and found him in the kitchen, sitting on the floor crying. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" "Daddy, I smelled the cookies Mommy used to make, but when I came here there was no one." Richard knelt beside his son. Ethan was hugging an apron Mary Louise had forgotten hanging on the chair. "It's Aunt Louise's," Ethan explained. "It smells like Mommy's cookies." Richard took the apron and indeed caught a familiar scent. It was the same vanilla fragrance Brittany used when she cooked. "Son, do you miss Mommy?" "I miss her so much, Daddy, but Aunt Louise reminds me of her. Not the same, but it feels like Mommy's here when she is." Richard hugged Ethan and the two stayed silent for a few minutes. Then he took his son back to bed. "Ethan, I need to ask you something important. Why didn't you like those pretty ladies?" "They didn't really look at me, Daddy. They only looked at you and our big house. Aunt Louise always looks me in the eyes when she talks to me." Ethan's answer hit Richard like a punch to the gut. Our 7-year-old had noticed something he, an experienced businessman, had missed. The next day, Richard decided to watch Mary Louise work. He went to the kitchen early and found her preparing breakfast as usual. "Mary Louise, can I ask you some questions?" "Of course, Mr. Parker." "Why do you like working here?" The question surprised her. "Well, it's a good home. You've always been a fair employer and I enjoy taking care of Ethan." "Is taking care of Ethan part of your job?" "Not officially, but he's such a sweet boy. He lost his mother so young. I think anyone who spends time with him ends up wanting to protect him." "What if I offered you a better job, with higher pay at another house?" Mary Louise stopped stirring the eggs and looked at Richard with surprise and sadness. "Do you want me to leave?" "No, I'm just asking. Mr. Parker, can I be honest? Please. Over the past 5 years, this house has become my family. I don't have children or a husband. Ethan is like the son of my heart. Mrs. Wilson is like an older sister. And even you, though you're my employer, I consider family." Richard felt a lump in his throat. When was the last time someone had spoken to him with such affection? "Mary Louise, do you know Ethan chose you to be his new mother?" "I know, Mr. Parker. And I also know that's impossible." "Why?" "Because I'm a simple woman, with little education and no money. You deserve someone on your level." "What if I didn't care about that?" Mary Louise's eyes widened. "Mr. Parker, I'm just imagining. What if I didn't care about social status, money, or education? What if I just wanted someone who truly loved my son? I don't understand where you're going with this." "Neither do I," Richard admitted, "but I'm starting to realize I might have been looking for the wrong things." Just then, Ethan walked into the kitchen, still in his pajamas. "Good morning, Daddy." "Good morning, Aunt Mary." "Good morning, sweetheart," Mary Louise replied, and Richard noticed how her face lit up when she saw Ethan. "Aunt Mary, can you tell me a story today?" "Of course I can. Which one would you like?" "The one about the boy who rode on a cloud." Mary Louise smiled and began telling a story about a brave boy who discovered he could ride on clouds whenever he felt sad. Richard was charmed by the tender way she narrated, using different voices for each character and making Ethan laugh. As the story unfolded, Richard realized something important. Ethan was completely absorbed, happy, and safe. This was how a child should feel around a motherly figure. After breakfast, Richard got an unexpected call from Brittany, the third model. "Richard, I need to tell you something about Ashley." "What is it?" "She's been telling everyone you're getting married, but she's also sharing intimate details about you and your family. She's talked about your wealth, your business, even Ethan's behavior." "What kind of details about Ethan?" "She said he's spoiled, that he needs strict discipline, and that once she marries you, she'll send him to a military school to teach him obedience." Richard felt a surge of anger. How dare Ashley speak about his son that way? "Brittany, why are you telling me this?" "Because I have nieces and nephews, Richard. I know how important it is for a child to feel loved and protected, and what Ashley is planning isn't love, it's control." After hanging up, Richard decided he needed to take action. He called all 4 models and scheduled a meeting for that afternoon. When they arrived, Richard got straight to the point. "Ladies, I've thought a lot about our situation, and I've come to a decision. I won't be marrying any of you." "What?" Ashley stood up abruptly. "Richard, you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. I realized I've been looking for a wife for the wrong reasons." "What reasons?" Samantha asked. "Social status, convenience, appearances. But I forgot the most important thing, real love and devotion to my son." "And you think you'll find that with a maid?" Ashley sneered. "Maybe. Maybe real love has nothing to do with money or looks." "Richard, you're making a mistake," Megan said. "What will people think?" "Honestly, I don't care what people think anymore." The 4 models left in outrage, but Richard felt relieved. For the first time in 2 years, he'd made a decision with his heart. But one question remained. What now? Was he really considering the possibility of a relationship with Mary Louise, a household employee? During dinner, he watched closely as she interacted with Ethan. Mary Louise cut his food into small pieces, gently wiped his face, and asked about his day at school. She did it all naturally, as if she were truly his mother. "Mary Louise," Richard called. "Yes, Mr. Parker." "Have you ever been married?" The question caught her off guard. Ethan also looked up curiously. "I was, Mr. Parker. A long time ago." "What happened?" Mary Louise hesitated. "If you don't mind, I'd rather not discuss it in front of Ethan." "Of course, you're right." Later, after Ethan went to bed, Richard found Mary Louise in the kitchen, preparing things for the next day. "Mary Louise, can we continue our conversation? If you'd like." "Tell me about your marriage." She sighed and sat in a chair. "I got married at 23 to James, a boy from my neighborhood. We thought we'd be happy forever, like all young people do." "What happened?" "James always wanted to get rich quick. He started getting involved with the wrong crowd, doing business I didn't approve of. When I got pregnant, he said a child would ruin his plans." "And then?" "He left. Said he'd come back when he was rich, but he never showed up again. 2 months later, I lost the baby." Richard felt a tightness in his chest. Mary Louise had gone through losses very similar to his own. "I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago, Mr. Parker. I've learned to live with it." "And you never took an interest in anyone again?" "No. After James, I lost trust in men. And when I lost the baby, I thought maybe I wasn't meant to be a mother." "But you're so maternal with Ethan." "It's different. Ethan already has a father. I just take care of him like a loving aunt." Richard grew thoughtful. Mary Louise had built walls around her heart, just as he had after Catherine left. "Mary Louise, can I ask you a personal question?" "Go ahead." "Do you think you could love again?" She looked at him in surprise. "Mr. Parker, why are you asking that?" Because I'm starting to realize I might have been looking for love in the wrong places." "I don't understand." "Ethan chose you, and maybe he's right. Maybe you're exactly what our family needs." Mary Louise stood up, flustered. "Mr. Parker, please don't say that. You're my employer. I'm your employee. It's not right." What if I weren't your employer? What if we were just Richard and Louise? But we're not, and we never can be. Why not? Because I'm poor, you're rich. I'm uneducated, you're a businessman. People will say I'm a gold digger, that I took advantage of the situation. And do you care what people will say? I do. And you should too, for Ethan's sake. He'll face prejudice at school if they find out his father married the maid. Richard realized Mary Louise had valid reasons for her concerns, but he also realized she hadn't denied the possibility of loving him. Louise, he used her name without Mrs. for the first time. Would you feel something for me if circumstances were different? She stopped arranging the dishes and stared at him. Mr. Parker, Richard, just Richard. Richard, that's not a fair question. Why? Because I already do. And that scares me. Mary Louise's confession caught Richard off guard. He hadn't expected her to be so honest. Scared of what? Of getting hurt again? Of losing my job? Of causing problems for Ethan? Of finding out that you're just confused by the situation? What if I told you I'm not confused? What if I told you I'm starting to realize you're the most important person in this house, after Ethan? I'd say you're going through a hard time and it'll pass. Louise, look at me. She met his gaze, and Richard saw tears in her eyes. I've fallen in love with you. Richard, you can't be serious. I am. Maybe it started the day Ethan chose you, or maybe it's been happening for months without me noticing. But now I know. You're the woman I want by my side. Mary Louise began to cry. This is impossible. Why? Because of everything. Our social differences, because I work here, because of Ethan. Ethan loves you. He's the one who opened my eyes. Richard, think about it. You're used to elegant women who know how to dress, who know important people. I don't even know how to use a fish fork. Catherine didn't either when we met. She learned. But the most important thing is that she had a kind heart, just like you. It's not the same. Catherine was a teacher. She went to college. Mary Louise, do you really think I care about that? Do you think Ethan cares about that? But other people will care. Your business partners, your friends. Then I'll find better people. Mary Louise sat down again, trying to process what she was hearing. Richard, I need to think. This is all so confusing for me. I understand. I'm not asking for an answer right now. I just want you to know how I feel. What if I say no? Then I'll respect your decision, but I'll keep loving you. That night, neither of them could sleep. Richard imagined what it would be like to have Mary Louise as his wife, to build a real family with her and Ethan. Mary Louise kept thinking about all the complications their relationship could bring. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. The next day, Ethan noticed something was different between the adults. Daddy, is Aunt Mary Louise sad? Why do you say that? She didn't sing while making breakfast, and she didn't tell any jokes. Richard realized Ethan was right. Mary Louise was quieter than usual, clearly deep in thought. Maybe she's just tired, son. Daddy, did you fight with Aunt Mary Louise? No, Ethan. Why do you ask? Because you're both acting weird, like when you used to fight with Mommy, but then you made up. Ethan's comparison made Richard see how observant his son was about family dynamics. Ethan, come here. I need to talk to you. They sat together on the living room couch. Son, would you really like Mary Louise to be your new mommy? I'd love that, Daddy, but she said she can't. What if I told you maybe she could? Ethan's eyes widened. Really? Maybe. But it depends on a lot of things. Do you understand some people might not like it? Why wouldn't they? Because Mary Louise isn't rich like us, and some people think that matters. But it doesn't matter, right, Daddy? Mommy always said what counts is a person's heart. Once again, Ethan showed wisdom that surprised Richard. You're right, son. Your mother always said that. So are you going to ask Aunt Mary Louise to marry you? I already did, but she's thinking about it. Why is she thinking? Doesn't she like you? She's scared, Ethan. Scared people will say bad things about us. But if she marries you, the mean people will go away and only the good ones will stay, right? Ethan's simple logic made Richard smile. His 7-year-old had grasped something it had taken him, an adult, much longer to understand. At lunch, Richard decided to be more direct with Mary Louise. Mary Louise, have you thought about what we talked about yesterday? I have. And what did you decide? That I need to talk to my mother before making any decision. Your mother doesn't approve of our closeness. My mother always taught me to know my place. She thinks poor people shouldn't dream too big. And do you agree with her? I don't know. I always did, but now I'm confused. Mary Louise, do you want me to talk to your mother? No, she'd only get more upset. Then let me prove my feelings are real. How? Give me a chance to get to know you better, not as boss and employee, but as Richard and Mary Louise. And how would we do that? We could have dinner together. Talk about our lives, our dreams, our fears. Here at home? If you'd like, or I could take you out to dinner. Richard, if someone sees us, then let them see. I'm not ashamed to be with you. Mary Louise agreed to have dinner with Richard that night after Ethan went to bed. Mrs. Wilson was put in charge of taking care of the boy. During dinner, Richard met a different side of Mary Louise. Without her work apron, free from the pressure of serving, she revealed herself to be an intelligent woman with interesting opinions and a delicate sense of humor. Louise, why did you never want to study further? I did. I dreamed of being a teacher, just like Mrs. Catherine. Why didn't you pursue that dream? Money. My family couldn't afford it, and after my father passed away, I had to work to help my mother. And now, if you had the chance, would you go to college? At 52? Would that even be possible? Of course it would. It's never too late to learn. Would you support me if I wanted to try? I'd support you completely. In fact, I have an idea. What if you studied education? You could fulfill your dream of becoming a teacher. Mary Louise's eyes filled with tears. No one has ever supported me like this. Then you've never had the right people by your side. During their conversation, Richard discovered that Mary Louise loved reading, adored classical music, and had a surprising knowledge of gardening. She, in turn, was delighted to learn that Richard played the piano and wrote poetry in his free time. You write poetry? She asked, surprised. Not written down, but Catherine always enjoyed it when I recited some for her. Could you recite one for me? Richard felt embarrassed but agreed. He recited a poem about the beauty of life's small moments, and Mary Louise was moved. It's very beautiful. You should write more. Maybe I will, if I find inspiration. And what would inspire you? You, Louise. You would inspire me. Dinner lasted late into the night. When they finally said goodbye, both knew something special was happening between them. In the days that followed, Richard began courting her discreetly. He left flowers in her room, wrote affectionate notes, and asked her to teach him recipes that Catherine had created. Ethan noticed the change in their behavior and grew excited. Dad, are you dating Aunt Louise? What makes you think that? Because you're smiling more, and Aunt Louise is singing again. And does that make you happy? So happy. Does that mean you'll get married? We don't know yet, Ethan. These things take time. But can I hope for it? Of course, son. Ethan started doing little things to bring Richard and Mary Louise closer. He asked her to help with his homework when Richard was around, suggested they tell bedtime stories together, and always found excuses to leave them alone. One evening, as the three of them watched a movie in the living room, Ethan fell asleep between Richard and Mary Louise. The two stayed there, watching the boy sleep, and Richard realized how much it felt like a real family. Louise, can I ask you something? Of course. What scares you most about the possibility of us getting married? Having to navigate your world, Richard. Parties, social gatherings, people who judge me constantly. What if I simplified my life? What if we stopped attending those events? You do that for me. I'd do anything for you and Ethan. But wouldn't your business suffer? Louise, money isn't everything. I realized that when I almost lost my son because of my ambition. What do you mean? When Ethan chose you, it was like he was telling me I'd lost my way, that I was prioritizing the wrong things. Mary Louise was touched by Richard's sincerity. And if people don't accept us as a couple, then we'll find better people. People who accept us for who we are, not what we have. Richard, I need to tell you something. What is it? I'm in love with you too. Mary Louise's confession made Richard's heart race. Since when? I think for months now. But I never let those feelings grow because I knew it was impossible. And now do you still think it's impossible? I think it's difficult, but not impossible. So, will you marry me? I will, but on one condition. What is it? I need time to prepare. I want to take that teaching course you suggested. I want to learn about your world. I want to be sure I can be the wife you deserve. Mary Louise, you're already the woman I want. You don't need to change a thing. I do for myself. I want to look in the mirror and know I deserve to stand by your side. Richard understood this was important for Mary Louise's self-esteem. How much time do you need? A year. A year to study, to prepare, to be sure this is real. And during that year? During that year, we can date. Get to know each other as a couple, not as employer and employee. I accept your terms. They sealed the agreement with a gentle kiss as Ethan slept peacefully between them. The next day, Richard gathered the household staff to announce their decision. Mrs. Wilson, Mary Louise and I have decided to marry. The housekeeper showed no surprise. About time, Mr. Parker. Anyone with eyes could see you two were in love. Do you approve? Absolutely. Mary Louise is the best thing to happen to this family in years. And you, Mary Louise, how do you feel? Scared, but happy. Don't be afraid, Mrs. Wilson said. True love always wins in the end. Ethan was overjoyed when he heard the news. Does this mean Aunt Mary Louise will be my real mommy? It does, son. And can I call her Mommy Mary Louise? If she allows it. Of course you can, sweetheart, Mary Louise replied, tears in her eyes. The engagement caused a stir in New York social circles. Some of Richard's friends were shocked, others tried to dissuade him, but he stood firm in his decision. Ashley spread vicious gossip, saying Richard had lost his mind and the marriage wouldn't last a year. The other models made sarcastic remarks about rich men fooled by clever maids, but Richard didn't care. For the first time in a long while, he was truly happy. During the year-long engagement, Mary Louise enrolled in a preparatory course and later secured a spot in a teaching program at a private university. Richard insisted on covering all expenses, but she made sure to contribute with part of the money she'd saved over the years. Ethan enthusiastically followed her progress, helping her study and celebrating every victory. Mommy Mary Louise, you got an A on the test. I did, my love. And do you know why? Why? Because you and your dad gave me the strength to believe in myself. Richard watched Mary Louise's growth with pride. She became even more confident, more eloquent, more self-assured, yet remained the same sweet, caring woman he'd fallen for. The wedding was set for a Saturday in September in the chapel of Mary Louise's University. It was a simple ceremony with few guests, some of Richard's true friends, Mary Louise's classmates, Mrs. Wilson, Margaret, Mary Louise's mother, and of course, Ethan as the ring bearer. Ashley tried to crash the wedding to cause trouble, but Mrs. Wilson gently escorted her out, saying, "Young lady, only those who root for the couple's happiness are welcome here." During the ceremony, Ethan cried with emotion as Richard and Mary Louise exchanged rings. When the priest asked if anyone objected, Ethan raised his hand. "I have something to say." Everyone laughed, expecting a child's sweet remark. "I want to thank God for giving me a new mommy as wonderful as Mommy Catherine, and I want to say our family is whole again now." There wasn't a dry eye in the chapel. After the wedding, the new family's life continued harmoniously. Mary Louise graduated in education and got a job at Ethan's school, finally fulfilling her dream of becoming a teacher. Richard simplified his social life, focusing more on family and businesses that truly mattered to him. He discovered domestic happiness was far more satisfying than any professional success. Ethan flourished with Mary Louise's constant presence. His grades improved, he made new friends, and most importantly, he became a truly happy child again. Mrs. Wilson remained with the family, now as a sort of surrogate grandmother to Ethan and a confidant to Mary Louise. Margaret, who initially struggled to accept her daughter's marriage, eventually gave in when she saw how Richard treated Mary Louise with genuine respect and love. 2 years after the wedding, Mary Louise became pregnant. Ethan was overjoyed at the prospect of having a little brother or sister. "Daddy, if it's a girl, can we name her Catherine after my first mommy?" "Of course, son. I think your mother Catherine would be honored. And if it's a boy? What name do you suggest?" "James, like the name of Mommy Mary Louise's first husband. That way, she'd know we don't hold any grudges against him." Ethan's suggestion moved Mary Louise to tears. At 9 years old, her heart's son showed remarkable emotional maturity. The baby turned out to be a girl, and she was indeed named Catherine. Ethan became the most protective big brother in the world, and little Catherine grew up surrounded by love. Ashley, who had predicted the marriage wouldn't last, had to eat her words. Richard and Mary Louise became one of the most solid and happiest couples in New York, proving that true love has nothing to do with money or social status. Richard's company continued to thrive, but now he had different motivations. He worked to secure his family's future, not to impress society. Mary Louise excelled as a teacher and was even invited to coordinate the school's education department. Her life experience, combined with her academic training, made her a respected and admired educator. Ethan grew up knowing he had 2 mothers, Catherine, who had given birth to him and loved him in his early years, and Mary Louise, who had raised him with as much affection as his birth mother. Mrs. Wilson often said this was proof that destiny had its own plans, sometimes better than ours. "Who would have thought a 7-year-old boy knew better than his father what the family needed?" she would remark proudly. 10 years after the incident with the models, Richard reflected on how much his life had changed. If someone had told him he'd marry the cook, he would have found it absurd, but now he knew it had been the best decision of his life. Ethan, now 17, always told his friends the story of how he'd chosen his new mommy from among 4 models. And he always ended by saying, "Sometimes the heart knows things the mind hasn't figured out yet." Mary Louise, at 62, remained the same sweet and caring woman who had first won Ethan's heart and then Richard's. But now she was also a fulfilled professional, socially respected, and above all, unconditionally loved. Little Catherine grew up hearing stories about her namesake mother and how her brother had been responsible for bringing the family together. She always said she wanted to be like Ethan when she grew up, brave enough to choose with her heart. Richard learned that true wealth wasn't in material possessions, but in the people we love and who love us back. He learned that a successful businessman could also be a devoted husband and a present father. And most importantly, he learned that sometimes the best decisions in life are made by 7-year-olds who see the world through the eyes of the heart. The story of the Parker family became legendary among friends and acquaintances. Whenever someone talked about impossible relationships or social differences, someone would tell the story of the businessman who almost married a model, but ended up finding true love in his own kitchen. And every time the story was told, the conclusion was always the same. Love doesn't choose social class, profession, or bank account. Love chooses hearts that complete each other, families that come together, and people who become better when they're with one another. Ethan always liked to say that his only contribution was pointing to the right person at the right time. But in truth, his contribution was much greater. He taught his father that love doesn't have to be complicated, that sometimes the simplest answer is the right one, and that children can be wiser than adults when it comes to matters of the heart. Years later, when Ethan married a teacher he met at the school where Mary Louise worked, he said in his wedding speech, "I learned from my family that true love doesn't seek perfection, it seeks wholeness. It doesn't seek outer beauty, it seeks beauty of the soul. And most of all, I learned that family isn't just about sharing the same blood, but sharing the same love." And whenever someone asked Richard if he regretted turning down 4 models to marry a cook, he always replied, "I didn't turn down 4 models to marry a cook. I turned down 4 wrong opportunities to embrace the one right one." The end. Now tell us what you thought of this story of love and perseverance. Do you think Ethan made the right choice by following his heart? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories like this one.